Alan Moore, who I think is the greatest comic book writer of all time, has written a ton of stories, but the period of his career where it felt like he was having the most fun in his career was with his ABC, America's Best Comics imprint. And with that imprint, we got such great titles as Tom Strong, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, my personal favorite, and Top 10. But today's subject of the video is going to be Promethea, and specifically this Absolute Edition that was just recently reprinted by DC Comics. So stay tuned and watch this video until the end. And we're back. My name is Taylor. This is Taylor Talks Comics. Thank you for joining me. Please give the video a thumbs up, comment down below with your thoughts throughout the duration of the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any videos that I post on my channel. All those things go a long way in helping my channel succeed, as it helps the YouTube algorithm put my videos in front of other comic book fans' eyeballs that might not know my channel exists. All right, so today we're talking about Absolute Promethea. Now, the ABC line of comics that Alan Moore had with Wildstorm back in the day, started off with Wildstorm, was amazing. It's truly one of my favorite periods of Alan Moore's work. Maybe my favorite period, I don't know. The 80s and 90s is pretty strong, but, or 80s and early 90s, but this truly felt like the most fun that Alan Moore is having as a writer. Truly showing that he loves the medium of comics, something that I feel is largely missed in his analysis. I think people talk about how much he hates comics, and I don't feel like that to be true, but that's another topic for another day. Promethea was truly one of his most ambitious works. And the thing I love most about all the top 10 work, all the top 10 comics line is how different they all truly feel. They all had like their own style to them based on the artists, like Chris Sprouse doing Tom Strong, Kevin O'Neill on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Gene Hahn, Xander Cannon on Top 10. But J.H. Williams' work on Promethea was absolutely amazing, truly, truly ambitious. And we can see that right off the bat with the slipcase here, which is this shiny gold artwork here from J.H. Williams. The spine of the slipcase very much looks similar. Now, there was one difference here. I think the original printing had the ABC logo here. Now it has the DC Bolt logo there, but what can you do? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Omnibus has the DC Vertigo logo, despite it never being printed by DC Vertigo. So what can you do? At least it's in print, right? And then here is the back of the slipcase. And then here is the wraparound cover with incredible artwork by J.H. Williams. There's incredible stuff here with your main character, Sophie Bangs, here with her friend behind her, writing out stories about the character of Promethea, which we'll get into here. And it does say DC Black Label up here, which is their new mature title, adult title line. It does come with a leaflet inside the slipcase, which I just usually tuck into my books for future keeping, I guess. The in papers are really, really great. I love the overall design of this whole book is really, really tremendous. And the back end papers has Promethea in this spot here, kind of breaking out, which fits the metafictional, metatextual aspects of the story. It does come with a beautiful gold ribbon, fitting of the story. And here's the title page. Then here are the contents, the table of contents of each chapter, with a little excerpt about what they're about. Written by Alan Moore, pencils by J.H. Williams, inks by Mick Gray. And we have additional artwork here by Charles Vess and Jose Villarrubio, and then additional credits. The introduction here is by Alan Moore. I don't know if this originally saw print in like the first issue of Promethea, or where this originally saw print, this introduction, because it's kind of a telling of the character Promethea. It's not really an introduction of like the story or anything, or of like the behind the scenes. And here's our first cover. And all the covers of Promethea, all the covers, I think, a period of America's Best Comics were tremendous. I think they all had like the overall package of a great comic book, and all can be really, really well read within its own singular issue, which is great. And then I don't know if this was like a alternate cover, like if they had a variant cover, or what happened here. maybe this was the actual... I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you know the story behind that. So we start the story off in Alexandria 411. So it's very much an older tale. And then right away, after 2 pages, we get the scene set here of what we're looking at. The year is 1999, but it's definitely a more... it kind of like Watchmen, how Watchmen took place in the mid-'80s, but it was like a futuristic version of the 80s. It wasn't, even though that story's coming out at the same time that the story is being released, same thing with here. This was being released in the late 90s. The world itself is a lot different, and you'll find out why and things. One of the there's all kinds of Easter eggs and in joke type of storytelling bits throughout here that you'll find and pay attention to and see them keep popping up. One of my favorites is the Weeping Gorilla comics. It's like the main, like, you know, in like Watchmen, when the main comics everyone is reading were pirate comics. This one is Weeping Gorilla comics within this story. And the funny in-joke about that is how back in I think the 60s and 70s, DC had like a mandate of, here's the Weeping Gorilla comics again back here. Like things that would sell on covers. I forget which editor put that out there, but it was things that would sell whenever they appeared on covers. One of them was the color purple, which the Weeping Gorilla is purple. One of them was somebody crying, and one of them was a gorilla. So if you have a gorilla on a cover, someone crying on a cover, or the color purple on the cover, it was going to sell better than other covers. So they kind of melded the 3 of those together for this. And that was before this was actually a DC comic, because Alan Moore, he left Awesome Comics with Rob Liefeld, where the original idea for Promethea was starting off as a reboot of the character Glory. And then he had a pitch to Rob Liefeld to reboot Prophet, which eventually, I guess, was kind of reworked into being Tom Strong, which would have been interesting to see. Like, I'm glad that we saw the Glory kind of come fruition. Obviously, it changed a lot of things about the character and what happened with it. But we never, and Tom Strong is what we saw with Prophet, but I would have been interested to see a reboot of Prophet that way, because we eventually got a reboot of Prophet with Brandon Graham, which is amazing, but a totally different style than what Alan Moore was going for with the pulpy nature of Tom Strong, but I digress. So it's originally started as a pitch for a reboot of Glory for Rob Liefeld's Awesome Comics. And then Awesome Comics went under. Then Scott Dunbier and Jim Lee brought Alan Moore over to Wildstorm to have his own imprint called America's Best Comics. Now, the reason why they eventually Jim Lee sold Wildstorm to DC Comics, and much to the chagrin of Alan Moore, because Alan Moore vowed to never work for DC Comics again, but now he's working for an imprint of a publishing company that got sold to DC, and now he's working for DC again. And for a while, Alan Moore thought that he would just leave, look at this great cover again, that he would just leave the book and leave DC because he wanted to stand true to his principles. But he has a great quote out there. I should have wrote it down, but he decided to fold on his principles for the sake of all the people all the artists and inkers and letters and things that worked under him at America's Best, because they would be out of jobs if he left ABC Comics. So he turned down his own principles that he was standing on for the sake of their jobs. And to DC's credit, one of the things that Alan Moore wanted was that he didn't want the DC logo to show up on the covers at all. So you can't tell this is a DC comic by any means. They're basically just distributing the comic, and there's no indication this is a DC comic. Now there obviously is with the DC Black Label and the DC Vertigo I showed you on that one and all that stuff. But at least when these issues were coming out, they were upholding to Alan Moore's requests. Now, the story of Promethea. That's all the behind-the-scenes stuff. As I'm flipping through this, you can see the incredible 2-page spreads and layouts by J.H. Williams. Truly, here's a Weeping Gorilla. Truly such an ambitious, from an art standpoint, piece of work. I can't imagine working out the compositions for all these pages and how incredible it was for J.H. Williams to be able to stretch his muscles that way, his artistic muscles. Another great cover. Some of them just border on, like the borders of the spreads are different, and it's kind of I'll try to find an example. Like this one isn't too different than your typical Well, that one's pretty different. They're all different layouts. What am I talking about? Like this one's kind of like your widescreen layout. So like it just has a border around it, but it all matches. Like it's all an overall design package from J.H. Williams that is just absolutely incredible. This to me is like Alan Moore getting kind of melding his Swamp Thing run as far as like letting his artists do whatever they wanted with the layouts and things, and truly getting the most out of the artist. A lot of things that we saw with Stephen Bissett and Rick Veitch and John Tuttleben do with Swamp Thing, we're seeing J.H. Williams kind of not in the same style. Like I don't want to say like J.H. Williams was copying off him, but like just like the creativity and the openness to these. I'd love to read some scripts from Promethea because I love a good Alan Moore script. Alan Moore scripts typically, like the Watchmen scripts, that was a 9-panel grid, and each panel would have like a whole page of script dedicated to it, talking about all the little Easter eggs and things and themes and whatnot. His scripts read as a conversation to the artist. So they're really fascinating to read. And he always kind of ends them with like a quip about, or if you have a better idea, do whatever you want. And so like some people view Alan Moore scripts as like constrictive because it's like there's so much detail that he packs in there. What can the artist even do? And but he does allow a lot of creativity within that. And I think that's one of the things that goes missing. But back to the story. I keep telling behind the scenes stuff. Promethea is a character through fiction, like within the story. She's a fictional character that has lived on for hundreds and hundreds of years. Most notably in the pulps and in the comic books and movies and TV and things. And every different version of Promethea lives on. And this is not untoo different than what we see with like, even like, we have a Superman movie coming out this week. And how many different versions of Superman on the big screen or animated or comics have we seen throughout the years? Each version lives as its own entity within this story. So there's like all these different types of versions of Promethea written by different fictional authors and things. And it is very much kind of loosely based off of Wonder Woman's history. So you'll see like them talk about how Promethea in the Golden Age of comics had a writer that was writing about how she was like, or had all these kind of BDSM kind of kinks added in, spliced throughout her story and the subtext and things. And then like this different area where she was like this different icon of more serious in tone and things. So all the different Prometheus kind of fit how they were creatively written. And Sophie Bangs is the main character within this story. And she is a college student writing about the character of Promethea. And from writing about it, it brings Promethea back. And then she becomes the entity of Promethea. She becomes the new Promethea. And I love this romance comic homage here too. And then she has to go throughout the world, and the whole story is building up to the apocalypse, saying that this Promethea, Sophie Bangs' version of Promethea, will bring about the apocalypse of the world. And not just the world, but of the ABC Comics imprint. So that's what we'll see by the time we get to volume 3 of the Absolute Editions, which concludes with issue number 3132, which is where the apocalypse happens. So I don't want to spoil how that happens or what brings about that but it isn't a spoiler that's coming because it's like the whole thing of the whole story is when the apocalypse happens. Now this issue has artwork by Jose Villarrubia, so you can see the characters becoming more realistic, and you get like this kind of fumetti artwork with J.H. Williams blended in. So they're like totally playing with the form of comics throughout the entirety of the story, and just really, really ambitious and amazing. All the layouts are breathtaking. Just incredible work. Like there's so many things in here. And I talk about how like magnum opus, the word magnum opus, to me is when an artist compiles all of the different styles and eras of their own career and compiles them together to make one truly great work. And this kind of feels like that to me. I don't know what Alan Moore's magnum opus would be. I feel like you had a few of them, if that's even a possibility. But this might be it. Because I see things throughout here that are informed by what he learned from as a writer doing Watchmen, and as a writer doing Swamp Thing, and as a writer doing, even working concurrently with the other pulp-inspired ABC comics. Like there's so many things throughout here that I feel like inform that. I love this 2-page spread here, like Where the Wild Things Are, Cat in the Hat, Alice in Wonderland. So many great things in here. I love this, the Sgt. Pepper's homage there. And as far as back matter goes in this absolute, I don't think there's much at all. No, we just get a afterword by Brad Meltzer. And his afterward's pretty kind of in line with what I feel like. It says, I don't love fantasy as a genre. And then talks about how Promethea was more than that to him. It wasn't just more, because it is a fantasy genre inspired tale, but fantasy is not my favorite genre as far as like sword and sorcery, elves and orcs kind of thing. But there are some stories that can supersede that for me, and Prometheus is one of them. So that's the Absolute Edition. It's really, really great. Highly recommend it. You can order it on organicpricebooks.com. Save $2 off by using my code TaylorTalksComics, or if you order it with 3 other books and you order 4 books or more, you can use TTC Ship It Together and save $5 off of that order. Or 5% off that order? I forget. The information is down in the description below of this video. But thank you so much for watching. Everyone give the video a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe if you aren't already. I want to hear all your thoughts about Alan Moore, Alan Moore's writing, your favorite Alan Moore comics. Put all those down in the comments. I want to talk to you guys down there about all this. And everyone, keep talking comics.